Before we begin this journey into the shadows of the Cold War, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story from the archives. The fluorescent lights of Miller's Market hummed with a sound that Arthur Penhaligon felt in his teeth. It was 10:15 p.m. on a Tuesday in October 1983. The automatic doors had been locked for 15 minutes. The last straggling customer, a woman buying cat food and a single TV dinner, had been ushered out into the cool Virginia night, and the silence of the grocery store was settling in. Arthur was a man of geometry and grids. At 44 years old, he had managed this mid-sized grocery store in the suburbs of Northern Virginia for 12 years. He wore his tie short and his sleeves rolled to exactly the same height on each forearm. To Arthur, a grocery store was not just a place where people bought sustenance. It was a system of order in a chaotic world. Cans were to be faced forward, labels out. The produce was to be misted every 30 minutes, and the floor was to be swept until it reflected the overhead tubes like a calm lake. Tonight, Arthur was walking the aisles, a clipboard in hand, performing the closing walkthrough. His night stalker, a 19-year-old named Kevin who moved with the urgency of a sloth, was buffering the linoleum in the produce section. The rhythmic whir-whir-whir of the machine was the only other sound. Arthur turned into aisle 4, sodas, mixers, and snacks. This was a high-traffic aisle. The shelves were often in disarray by closing time, ravaged by teenagers after school and tired fathers on their way home. Arthur sighed, tucking his clipboard under his arm, and began to face the shelves, pulling the stock forward to create a solid wall of product. He aligned the bags of pretzels. He straightened the rows of ginger ale. Then he reached the cola section. It was a wall of red and white. Glass bottles were still common enough, though plastic was making its inroads. The clinking sound of glass on glass was soothing to Arthur. He reached for a six-pack of Coca-Cola glass bottles sitting on the second shelf, intending to pull it forward. His hand paused. Arthur knew his inventory. He knew the weight of things. He knew that a box of cornflakes felt different than a box of bran because of the density of the settling contents. He knew that a ripe melon had a specific resonance when tapped. And he knew, with a certainty that bypassed his conscious brain, that the bottle his fingers were currently touching was wrong. It was a single glass bottle, sitting loose next to a cardboard six-pack carrier. It looked like a standard 12-ounce bottle. The logo was correct. The cap was crimped tight. The dark liquid inside was the color of mahogany, just as it should be. But when Arthur lifted it, the balance was off. It wasn't empty, but the liquid inside didn't slosh correctly. It moved sluggishly, or perhaps there wasn't as much liquid as there appeared to be. Arthur frowned, adjusting his glasses. He held the bottle up to the light. The glass was thick, the fluting familiar, but the light didn't pass through the bottom half of the bottle in the way physics dictated it should. "Kevin," Arthur called out, his voice echoing slightly. The buffer stopped in the distance. "Yeah, Mr. P? Did you restock the loose singles in aisle 4 today?" "No, sir. Just the liter bottles." Arthur pursed his lips. A customer must have left it. Perhaps they grabbed a cold one from the front cooler, decided against it, and shelved it here. But the bottle wasn't cold. It was room temperature. And more importantly, the cap didn't look like it had been twisted off and put back on. It looked factory sealed. Arthur tilted the bottle. A normal soda bottle had a bubble of air at the neck. This one had the bubble, but when he tilted it, a distinct, solid thunk vibrated through the glass against his palm. It was subtle, faint enough that a casual shopper would never notice. But Arthur Penhaligon was not a casual shopper. He was the manager. He looked around the empty store, a sudden, irrational prickle of unease running down his neck. It was the same feeling he got when a storm was coming, a drop in barometric pressure. He didn't put the bottle in the return cart. He didn't put it back on the shelf. Instead, Arthur slipped the bottle into the deep pocket of his blazer. It pulled the fabric down with its strange, uneven weight. "Finish the floors, Kevin," Arthur called out, turning on his heel. "I'll be in the office." As he walked toward the manager's booth at the front of the store, Arthur couldn't shake the feeling that the geometry of his world had just shifted, and the straight lines he loved so much were beginning to curve. Chapter 2. The False Bottom. The manager's office was a glass-walled cube elevated 3 feet above the checkout lanes. It offered a panopticon view of the registers, designed to intimidate potential shoplifters and ensure cashiers weren't counting change too slowly. Arthur locked the door behind him and sat at his metal desk. He placed the bottle on the blotter, directly under the intense beam of his desk lamp. Up close, the anomaly was even more apparent to his trained eye. The glass near the base had a microscopic seam, a hairline fracture that ran the circumference of the bottle, hidden cleverly within the ridges of the glass molding. If you weren't looking for it, it was invisible. But Arthur had spent 12 years looking for dents in cans and tears in packaging. He saw it. He sat there for a long time, the hum of the store's refrigeration units vibrating through the floor. The sensible thing to do was to throw it away. It was defective product. That was the protocol. Defective product goes in the bin, marked as shrinkage. But curiosity is a powerful force, especially for a man whose life is defined by predictable routines. Arthur opened his desk drawer and took out a rubber jar opener and a towel. He wrapped the towel around the top half of the bottle and gripped the bottom half with the rubber pad. He twisted. It didn't budge. He tried the reverse, twisting the bottom clockwise. Nothing. He paused, thinking. If this was a container, it had to open. He looked at the seam again. He picked up the bottle and shook it gently near his ear. Thunk, thunk. There was liquid in the top, sealed in a separate chamber, but the bottom was a solid weight. He pressed his thumb against the concave depression at the very bottom of the bottle. It felt rigid. He pressed harder, pushing up and twisting to the left simultaneously, a motion akin to opening a child-proof cap. Click. The sound was mechanical, precise, and entirely alien to a soda bottle. The bottom of the bottle didn't unscrew. It unlocked. Arthur pulled gently, and the bottle separated into two distinct pieces. The top 2/3 contained the liquid, sealed in a glass reservoir. The bottom third was a hollowed-out cylinder lined with black felt. Sitting snugly inside this hidden compartment was a small silver canister, no larger than a tube of lipstick. Arthur's breath hitched. He stared at the deconstructed bottle on his desk. This was not a manufacturing error. This was craftsmanship. This was deliberate. He reached out with trembling fingers and picked up the silver canister. It was cold metal, unmarked. He unscrewed the tiny cap. Inside was a tightly wound spool of film, not the kind you put in a family camera, but something much smaller, narrower, microfilm. Arthur Penhaligon, who worried about produce spoilage and coupon expiration dates, was holding something that looked like it belonged in a cinema matinee, not a grocery store in Virginia. He quickly reassembled the bottle. It clicked back together with satisfying precision, the seam vanishing into the glass texture. He looked out the glass walls of his office. Kevin was down in aisle 9 now, swaying to music on his Walkman. The store was dark beyond the safety lights. Arthur realized two things simultaneously. First, someone had placed this bottle on his shelf intentionally. It was meant to be found, but not by him. It was meant to be picked up by someone who knew the trick, the twist and push maneuver. Second, if the intended recipient came looking for it and found it gone, they would wonder where it went. Arthur looked at the safe in the corner of his office where the daily cash drops were kept. He shook his head. Too obvious. If someone came for this, they wouldn't hesitate to break a safe. He looked at his blazer pocket. "Kevin!" he shouted over the intercom system, startling himself with the volume of his own voice. "I'm heading out. Lock the front. Use the side exit." He didn't wait for a response. He grabbed his coat, shoved the bottle deep into the inner pocket, and walked briskly toward the exit. He felt like he had stolen something, though it was his store. As he stepped out into the night air, the wind felt colder than usual. He hurried to his station wagon, unlocked the door, and threw himself inside, locking it immediately. He checked the rearview mirror. The parking lot was empty, save for Kevin's rusted Camaro. But as Arthur turned the key in the ignition, he couldn't help but scan the shadows of the strip mall, wondering if eyes were watching aisle 4 from the darkness. Chapter 3. Domestic Espionage. Arthur lived in a split-level house 3 miles from the store. It was a quiet neighborhood of manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. His wife, Martha, was already asleep. She worked the early shift at the local library. Arthur entered his house like a stranger. He took his shoes off at the door, wincing when the floorboard creaked. He went straight to the basement. The basement was Arthur's sanctuary. It was where he kept his workbench, his tools, and his collection of model trains, another hobby that satisfied his need for order and control. He placed the Coke bottle on his workbench, next to a vise and a jar of turpentine. He paced the length of the small room. The washing machine sat in the corner, silent and white. He had to know what was on the film. It was a dangerous impulse. He knew that. He had read the thrillers. He knew that the man who sees too much is the man who gets removed. But the alternative was ignorance, and ignorance was a form of chaos. If he knew what this was, he could decide what to do. Was it criminal? Was it political? Was it just some corporate theft? He didn't have a microfilm reader. Those were machines for libraries and government offices. But he understood optics. He had built model trains. He understood magnification. Arthur found a magnifying glass he used for painting minute details on model boxcars. He set up a strong desk lamp. He took the canister out of the bottle again and used a pair of tweezers to gently pull the leader of the film. The strip was tiny. Holding it up to the light was useless. It was just a dark blur. He needed to project it. He spent the next hour rigging a crude contraption. He used a slide projector he hadn't touched since the family vacation to the Grand Canyon in 1979. He removed the slide carousel and fashioned a gate for the microfilm using cardboard and tape. It was clumsy, but Arthur was an engineer of the practical. He turned off the basement lights. The room plunged into darkness, smelling of sawdust and damp concrete. He switched on the projector fan. The beam of light hit the white sheet he had tacked to the wall. He fed the microfilm strip into the light path, his hands shaking so much the image danced on the wall. Focus. Twist the lens. The blur sharpened. White text on a black background. It wasn't a list of numbers. It wasn't a bank account ledger. It was a schematic. The image was technical, complex. Lines, arcs, measurements in metric, Cyrillic text in the corners. It looked like the cross-section of a machine, something with turbines and intake valves. Arthur advanced the film. The next frame was a document, typewritten, in English. Subject: Prototype Guidance System, Naval Air Test Center, Patuxent River. Arthur's stomach dropped. Patuxent River was less than 2 hours away. This wasn't corporate espionage. This wasn't Coke stealing recipes from Pepsi. He advanced again, a list of names, dates, times. Drop site, Sector 4. Asset, Blue Jay. Timeline, No V12. November 12th was 3 days away. Arthur cut the power to the projector. The sudden darkness was blinding. He sat in the dark, the afterimage of the documents burning in his retinas. He was a grocery store manager. He worried about the price of lettuce. He worried about the roof leaking in the break room. He did not worry about naval guidance systems. He had just intercepted a communication between Soviet intelligence and an asset operating in the United States. And he had found it next to the pretzels. He scrambled to turn the lights back on, suddenly terrified of the dark corners of his own basement. He dismantled his makeshift setup with frantic haste, shoving the projector back into its box. He carefully wound the film back into the canister, placed the canister into the bottle, and locked the false bottom. He needed to hide it. But where? The basement was the first place someone would look if they tore the house apart. The bedroom? No. Martha might find it. He looked at the washing machine. Behind it was a loose section of drywall where the plumbing entered the house. Arthur pulled the washer out a few inches, groaning with the effort. He wedged the bottle into the gap between the pipes and the wall insulation. It was dusty and covered in spider webs, a place no one reached. He pushed the washer back. He went upstairs, washed his hands twice, and crawled into bed next to his sleeping wife. He stared at the ceiling for 6 hours, listening to every car that drove down his street, convinced that each one was coming for him. Chapter 4. The Surveillance of Isle 4. Arthur went to work the next morning at 7 a.m. and operating on caffeine and adrenaline. He looked terrible. His tie was slightly crooked, a detail that his assistant manager, Sarah, noticed immediately. "Rough night, Arthur?" she asked, stirring coffee in the break room. "Insomnia," Arthur muttered, avoiding her eyes. "Just thinking about inventory." He went to his office, but he didn't do paperwork. He sat in his glass tower and watched aisle 4. If the bottle was a drop, then 2 people were involved. The person who placed it, the drop, and the person who was supposed to pick it up, the pickup. The bottle had been there last night. That meant the drop had already happened. The pickup was the missing variable. The intended recipient would come to the store, go to the soda aisle, look for the bottle, and find it missing. What would they do then? Arthur watched. At 9 a.m., a mother with twin toddlers spent 10 minutes in the aisle arguing over fruit snacks. At 10:15 a.m., and Kevin, working a double shift, restocked the chips, completely oblivious to the geopolitical drama that had occurred inches from his head the night before. At 11:30 a.m., a man in a gray raincoat walked in. Arthur sat up straighter. The man was in his 50s, nondescript. He didn't take a cart. He walked with purpose. He bypassed the produce. He bypassed the bakery. He went straight to aisle 4. Arthur grabbed his clipboard and practically ran down the stairs from the office, trying to look busy. He maneuvered his way to the end of the aisle, pretending to check a display of canned pumpkins. The man in the raincoat stood in front of the Coca-Cola section. He stood there for a long time. He wasn't looking at the prices. He was scanning the bottles. His eyes moved left to right, then back again. He reached out and touched a 6-pack, moving it slightly aside to look behind it. He paused. He looked confused. He checked the shelf above. He checked the shelf below. Arthur held his breath. This was him. This was the pickup. The man turned around, frustration etched on his face. He looked directly at Arthur. Arthur froze. He forced a customer service smile onto his face, though his lips felt like rubber. "Can I help you find something, sir?" The man studied Arthur. His eyes were cold, assessing. "I'm looking for the vintage stock. You usually have singles here." "We're waiting on a shipment," Arthur lied, the words tumbling out. "Supply chain issues, you know how it is." The man stared at him for a second longer than was comfortable. "Supply chain issues," he repeated, his voice flat. "That's unfortunate. Can I interest you in a liter bottle? They're on sale." "No," the man said. "I needed the small ones. Specific taste." The man didn't buy anything. He buttoned his raincoat and walked out of the store. Arthur watched him go through the glass doors. He didn't go to a car. He walked to the bus stop on the corner and stood there waiting. Arthur retreated to his office, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The man hadn't been angry. He had been alerted. The signal had been missed. The protocol was broken. Arthur grabbed the phone book from his desk. He needed to call someone. The police? No. The local police handled shoplifters and traffic accidents. They wouldn't know what to do with microdots and Soviet schematics. They'd probably mishandle the evidence or, worse, laugh at him. The FBI. He dialed the number for the Washington field office. His finger hovered over the rotary dial. If he called the FBI, his life was over. The store would become a crime scene. His name would be in the papers, and the people who planted the bottle, people who had access to naval bases and sophisticated spy gear, would know who turned them in. He hung up the phone. He needed more information. He needed to be sure. He needed to know who put the bottle there in the first place. He opened the employee logbook. Who had worked aisle 4 yesterday before closing? Kevin. And before Kevin? Wait. Arthur scanned the delivery logs. The Coca-Cola distributor came on Tuesdays. The delivery driver stocked the shelves himself. It was a service they provided. The driver's name was on the invoice. Stanislaw Stan Novak. Arthur knew Stan. Stan was a gregarious guy, always telling jokes, always giving free keychains to the cashiers. Stan had been delivering to Miller's Market for 3 years. Arthur felt a chill. The perfect cover. A delivery driver has access to everywhere. He can move product, place items, and no one questions why he's putting a bottle on a shelf. Arthur looked at the schedule. The next Coca-Cola delivery was Friday, but the microfilm said timeline, Nov 12. That was Saturday. They would try again. If the first drop failed, they would try again before the deadline. Chapter 5. The baker's yeast. Wednesday passed in a blur of paranoia. Every customer looked like a spy. Every phone call made Arthur jump. He found himself checking the brake lines of his car before leaving work. Thursday morning, Arthur arrived at the store at 5 a.m., 2 hours before opening. He went to the bakery section. He needed a way to mark the shelves without it being obvious. He needed to know if a new bottle was placed. He took a bag of flour and dusted the very back of the shelf in the soda section. Just a fine, imperceptible layer. If someone pushed a bottle deep into the row, they would leave a trail in the dust. He felt ridiculous. He felt like a child playing detective. But he also felt a strange, grim determination. This was his store. They were using his store, his clean floors, his organized shelves, as a mailbox for treason. It offended his sense of order more than the danger frightened him. The day dragged on. Arthur spent most of it on the floor, ostensibly rearranging end caps for the upcoming Thanksgiving rush. But in reality, he was acting as a human security camera. At 2:00 p.m., Sarah approached him. "Arthur, you're making the staff nervous." "What?" Arthur blinked, looking up from a display of cranberry sauce. "You're hovering. You've been staring at the soda aisle for 6 hours. Kevin thinks he's in trouble. Did someone steal something?" Arthur looked at Sarah. She was a good woman, a single mother who worked hard. If he told her, he put her in danger. "We have an inventory discrepancy," Arthur said, falling back on the comfortable language of retail management. "I'm trying to trace the source of the shrink. Just keep everyone focused on the front end, Sarah. I'll handle the floor." Sarah looked unconvinced but nodded. "Okay, but take a break, Arthur. You look like you're about to snap." She didn't know the half of it. Chapter 6. The Bread Man. Friday morning. Delivery day. The large red Coca-Cola truck pulled into the loading bay at 8 a.m. Sharp. The air brakes hissed, a sound that usually signaled the arrival of commerce, now sounding like a threat. Arthur stood in the receiving area, clipboard in hand. He watched the bay door roll up. Stan jumped down from the cab. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache and a laugh that shook his belly. "Morning, Artie. Beautiful day for carbonation, huh?" Stan boomed, slapping his leather gloves together. "Good morning, Stan," Arthur said, his voice tight. "You look pale, boss. You eating enough? My wife makes these pierogies. I bring you some next week. Put some color in your cheeks." Stan began unloading the crates on the dolly. Arthur watched his hands. They were large, calloused hands. Hands that could crush a throat or gently place a glass bottle with a false bottom on a shelf. "Just the usual order today, Stan?" Arthur asked, stepping closer than usual. "Plus the promo stock for the holiday," Stan said, not looking up as he stacked crates. "Got you 5 extra cases of the liter bottles. You'll move them." Arthur watched Stan wheel the dolly out onto the floor. He followed him, keeping a distance of 2 aisles. He watched through the gaps in the cereal boxes. Stan worked efficiently. He rotated the stock. He pulled the old bottles forward. He chatted with an elderly woman asking about diet sodas. He seemed completely normal. Then Arthur saw it. Stan reached into the pocket of his heavy work vest. He didn't pull out a pricing gun. He pulled out a single glass bottle. He did it so smoothly it was almost a magic trick. In one motion, he cleared a space on the second shelf, slid the bottle in, and faced the other products around it to conceal it slightly. It wasn't hidden, but it was nestled, protected. Stan stood back, admired his work, and whistled a tune. Arthur ducked behind the cornflakes. It was confirmed. Stan was the drop. Stan finished his route, got the invoice signed by Sarah at the front desk, and drove away. Arthur waited 5 minutes. Then he walked to the aisle. He found the bottle Stan had placed. He picked it up. It had the same strange weight, the same thunk. Arthur didn't take it to his office this time. He put it back. He had made a decision. He couldn't stop this alone. He had the first bottle as evidence, but if he took this one, they would know the drop was compromised. They might kill Stan. They might kill Arthur. He needed to catch the person picking it up, and he needed professional help. He went to the payphone outside the store, a public line, safer than the office. He dialed the operator. "Get me the FBI," he said, "and tell them it's about Project Blue Jay." He didn't know if Blue Jay was the project name or the person, but he remembered it from the microfilm. It was the only card he had to play. Chapter 7. Agent Miller. The response was terrifyingly fast. Arthur had expected to be put on hold. to be transferred to a desk sergeant. Instead, the moment he said Blue Jay, the operator's tone changed. She asked him to hold. 30 seconds later, a voice came on the line, clear, authoritative, and utterly humorless. Identify yourself. My name is Arthur Penhaligon. I manage Miller's Market on Route 7. I have something that belongs to you. Or rather, something that belongs to the Soviets. Stay where you are. Do not hang up. Do not speak to anyone. 20 minutes later, a beige sedan pulled up to the curb, not the main entrance, but the side near the payphone. A man got out. He wore a gray suit, but he didn't look like the man Arthur had seen in the aisle. This man looked like a shark in human clothing. He was younger, sharper. Mr. Penhaligon? Yes. I'm Agent Miller. Let's take a walk. They walked around the back of the strip mall, near the dumpsters. The air smelled of rotting vegetables and cardboard. You mentioned Blue Jay, Miller said. Why? Arthur explained everything. The first bottle, the microfilm. He admitted to viewing it, which made Miller wince. The schematic, the second bottle placed by Stan just an hour ago. Miller listened without interrupting. He was still intense. When Arthur finished, Miller looked at him with a strange mix of suspicion and grudging respect. You have the first bottle? It's behind my washing machine. Good, leave it there for now. If you move it, you might be seen. Miller looked toward the store. You say the driver placed a second one today? Yes, Stan Novak. Miller nodded slightly as if checking a mental file. Novak, we know him. We didn't know he was active. We thought he was dormant. You know him? Arthur was incredulous. He brings me pierogies. He also brings intelligence to the KGB residency in D.C., Miller said dryly. Mr. Penhaligon, you have stumbled into the middle of a counterintelligence operation that has been running for 6 months. We lost the trail of the guidance system leaks. You just found it. So, arrest him. Arrest Stan. No, Miller said sharply. Stan is just the courier. We want the recipient. We want the person who comes to pick up that bottle. That's the handler. That's the big fish. Miller turned to Arthur. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to go back into that store. You are going to manage your inventory. You are going to smile at your customers. And you are going to leave that bottle exactly where it is. And when the guy comes to get it, we will be there, Miller said. My team will be in place within the hour. We'll be in the stockroom. We'll be in the parking lot. You won't see us, but we'll be there. What if he sees you? He won't, unless you act strange. Can you do that, Arthur? Can you act normal? Arthur straightened his tie. He thought about the chaos of the last 3 days. He thought about the invasion of his ordered world. I manage a grocery store during the holiday rush, Agent Miller. I can handle stress. Miller almost smiled. Good. Go back inside. We'll be in touch. Chapter 8. The Long Saturday, November 12th. The date from the microfilm. The store opened at 8:01 a.m. By 8:30 a.m., it was crowded. It was a payday weekend, and the aisles were full of families. To anyone else, it was a normal Saturday. To Arthur, the store had become a stage set. He knew that the new stock boy sweeping the entrance was actually a federal agent. He knew that the van parked in the fire lane occupied by a repair crew was full of listening equipment. He knew that Agent Miller was currently sitting in the security booth, watching the camera feeds that Arthur usually monitored. Arthur walked the floor. He felt exposed, naked. Every time the automatic doors swooshed open, his heart jumped. 9 a.m., nothing. 10 a.m., a spill in aisle 2, pickles. Arthur supervised the cleanup with trembling hands. 11 a.m. At 11:15 a.m., the man from the previous surveillance, the man in the raincoat, entered the store. Arthur was at the customer service desk. He saw the man enter. He grabbed the microphone for the store intercom. This was the signal Miller had given him. Price check on register 3, price check on register 3. It was a code. It meant target on sight. The stock boy near the door stopped sweeping and moved toward the exit, blocking the path slightly. The repair crew outside would be alert. The target didn't look nervous. He looked annoyed, like a man running an errand he hated. He wore the same gray raincoat. He walked with the same purpose. He went to aisle 4. Arthur couldn't see aisle 4 from the desk. He had to trust the agents. He had to trust the geometry of the trap. He waited. The seconds ticked by on the wall clock like hammer blows. 1, 2, 10. Suddenly there was a commotion. Not a shout, but a sound of movement, a scuffle, a display of potato chips crashing to the floor. "Hey!" someone shouted. "Watch it!" Arthur ran toward the aisle. He rounded the corner just in time to see the man in the raincoat pinned against the shelving unit by two men who had emerged from seemingly nowhere. One had been a customer browsing the bread section. The other was the stock boy. The man in the raincoat was holding the Coke bottle. He hadn't even had time to pocket it. "Federal agents! Drop it!" The man's eyes went wide. He didn't drop the bottle. For a split second, he looked like he might throw it, smash the evidence on the linoleum floor. "Don't do it," Arthur said. He hadn't meant to speak. It just came out. He was standing at the end of the aisle. The spy looked at him. "If you smash that," Arthur said, his voice surprisingly steady, "it's going to be a nightmare to clean up." And that floor was just waxed. The absurdity of the comment seemed to break the tension. The spy blinked. The agents moved in. They grabbed his wrists. They secured the bottle. Handcuffs clicked. It was over in 20 seconds. Shoppers were staring, mouths open. A toddler began to cry. Arthur stepped forward. "Folks, everything is fine, just a security issue. Shoplifter. Please continue your shopping. We have a special on turkeys in the meat department." He ushered the crowd away as the agents hustled the man out the back fire exit, avoiding the spectacle of the front door. Arthur looked at the shelf. The chips were scattered. The facing was ruined. He bent down and started picking up the bags of chips, one by one, restoring order. Chapter 9. The debrief. 2 hours later, Agent Miller sat in Arthur's office. The store was still open, operating as if nothing had happened. "We got him," Miller said. "His name is Victor. He's a cultural attaché at the embassy. He won't have diplomatic immunity for this, not with the evidence we have. And thanks to your previous retrieval, we have the first batch of documents too." "What about Stan?" Arthur asked. "Stan was picked up 3 blocks away. He's currently answering questions he doesn't want to answer." Miller stood up. He placed a hand on the desk. "You did good, Arthur. Most people would have thrown that bottle away or ignored it. You paid attention." "It was in the wrong place," Arthur said simply. "We're going to need to keep the bottle you found at home. Evidence. And we'll need you to sign some non-disclosure agreements. You never saw this. This never happened." "I understand. One more thing," Miller said, pausing at the door. "The Navy guys, they're breathing easier tonight. That guidance system, if the Soviets got the specs, they could have jammed our fighters. You saved pilots' lives today, Mr. Penhaligon. Just thought you should know." Miller left. Arthur sat in his glass box. He looked down at the registers. The rhythm of the store continued. Beep, beep, ka-ching. He looked at aisle 4. It looked perfectly normal. He felt a sudden, overwhelming exhaustion. He put his head on his desk and closed his eyes. Chapter 10. Inventory returns. The next week, things returned to normal, but they were different. Kevin asked about the shoplifter who was dragged out. Arthur gave a vague answer about a repeat offender. A new delivery driver came from Coca-Cola. His name was Dave. He was quiet, didn't tell jokes, and just did his job. Arthur watched him like a hawk for the first month, checking every bottle. But they were just soda bottles. Arthur went back to his routine. He faced the shelves. He checked the floors. But sometimes, late at night, when he was the last one in the store, he would walk to aisle 4. He would pick up a glass bottle of Coke. He would weigh it in his hand. He would feel the balance, the liquid moving inside, the imperfection of the glass. He realized that the world was not as solid as he thought. It had false bottoms. It had hidden compartments. The order he loved was just a thin layer of glass over a chaotic, dangerous reality. But it was his job to maintain that layer, to keep the shelves straight, to keep the floor clean, to make sure that when Mrs. Higgins came for her cat food, the world made sense. Arthur put the bottle back on the shelf. He aligned the label perfectly forward. "Kevin," he called out into the quiet store, You missed a spot in produce. On it, Mr. P. Arthur Penhaligon, the guardian of the grid, turned off the lights in aisle 4 and walked back to his office. The Cold War was still freezing outside, but in Miller's Market, everything was accounted for.